The MMA India Show.
Hey guys, prediction time for Tony and Justin. Who's more durable? Both are very high-level athletes, so that's a tough question. But I would go with Tony, given the fact that he has the ability to take punishment and then come back and win the fight. And we don't need to really mention his cardio and his endurance. That is speaks for itself. Tony's unpredictable offense or Justin's seek and destroy style. Justin fights, he has a lot of good power shots. However, I would go with Tony's unpredictable offense or unpredictable fighting style. He's so unorthodox that he'll make a person feel real comfortable or uncomfortable and then take advantage of that. He's able to manipulate a thought process, and just where one person makes the mistake, that's where he grabs you. And regardless of if it's standing up or on the ground. So I would go with Tony's unpredictability and Tony's unorthodox. So next question is Justin's wrestling or Tony's grappling? Well, obviously, Justin is a very high-level wrestler. However, he fights a lot like Dan Henderson, or similar to Dan Henderson and Rampage Jackson. His offensive wrestling is something he doesn't really take advantage of. He likes to stand and bang. So, and Tony can fight anywhere. You can take him down. You can in the clinch, in scrambles, anywhere he can fight. So, and he's a little more seasoned in those terms. And he comes. He has the backing of an excellent team. And so in that case, I would go with Tony's grappling. Next question would be who's cardio? This is a tricky question because Justin being a collegiate and a high-level wrestler obviously comes with excellent cardio, but and on top of that, Tony is 37 years old. Tony just cut weight and made weight for a fight that didn't happen. So that is a big concern in my head for Tony. But Tony also showed that he's able to fight. Like when he fought RDA, he came back and he won the fight. And this was a fight at very high altitude. So, and he did pretty well at the later rounds. So I would go, even though I'm scared regarding Tony and cutting weight 2.5-3 weeks ago. At the age of 37, I would still go with Tony. Ultimately, the question is ultimately in which area the fight is won or lost and why. I think it's going to come down to who is mentally more game. Apart from the obvious facts, Tony's 37, just cut weight. He's here to fight. He finds a way to win. Justin has, obviously they haven't fought somebody like each other before, but Tony comes, his ability to adapt and overcome and get the decision going his way or the fight going his way is just unparalleled. Tony is like, hasn't lost in, I don't know. I think the last time he lost was when Henry Cejudo and Usman hadn't even made their debuts yet as pro fighters. Tony, I think for 5 years has been #1 contender. He comes with a wealth of experience for this kind of fight. I feel Tony takes it in the scrambles or makes Justin get too comfortable and then takes advantage of him, finishing him in the 3rd or the 4th. Tony reminds me of, or Tony has attributes of fighters like Matt Brown, Nogueira, Carlos Condit, Nick Diaz. In a lot of ways, his ability, his being unorthodox, his ability to take punishment, his ability to come back from that punishment and win the fight, and his work rate. So I would go with Tony in the 3rd or the 4th. Also, Justin had a 3-week camp, apparently without his coach, Matt Whitman. So that is possibly could play a factor as well.
Tony versus Justin is a crazy fight. They both have a very aggressive fighting style. I think most of the time fight will be on the feet. I don't see anybody attempting any takedowns. But if it hits on the ground, Tony will have upper hand in grappling. Tony has a great cardio. I don't know how well prepared Justin is conditioning wise. Uh, Justin will land heavy shots early in the fight, but Tony has a better fight IQ than him. I think Tony's unorthodox fighting style will be too much for him to handle. I see Tony winning this fight in third or fourth round via TKO or via his favorite submission, Darce choke.
Let's kick things off with who is more durable between the two, Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje. Tony Ferguson has been tagged in his fights. He has a tendency of going into Granby rolls and initiating these awkward scrambles from which he either gets a submission or he lands up in relatively safe positions for him. Whereas on the other hand, Justin Gaethje has been finished also. But if you want to call the chin between the two, Justin Gaethje has a special chin. So durable, but a chin which has been weathered and tested of late. But I would still believe that Justin Gaethje is the more durable between the two. Next up, let's weigh Justin Gaethje's NCAA Division 1 wrestling versus Tony Ferguson's 10 Planet BJJ black belt. Justin Gaethje has not really shown offensive wrestling over his fights. He uses his wrestling pedigree more to defend takedowns and keep the fight standing. As Tony Ferguson, we all know, has amazing chokes. He gets into these very awkward scrambles, and at the end of which he gets the upper hand. If past experience were to be any pointer, Justin Gaethje not using aggressive wrestling, I would tend to believe that Justin Gaethje doesn't not really have the discipline in his wrestling techniques to not only take Ferguson down, which I think he might be able to, but keep him controlled on the floor is something I don't really see happening. I would give Ferguson the edge when it comes to grappling. Next up, let's talk about their striking. Ferguson has a very unorthodox style, and Justin Gaethje's style is very plodding. He doesn't mind getting hit to return a few. In long range, when the fights are far off, I believe Ferguson would have the advantage. His snap kicks are really going to pay dividends later on in the fights. When you come in closer to the roundhouse kicks, the roundhouse kick range, Justin Gaethje has the advantage. He has devastating leg kicks. Deeper into that, the punching ranges. Justin Gaethje is heads and shoulders above when it comes down to the roundhouse range and the punching range. But when you come in closer again, you have the elbows. Ferguson is super dangerous with his elbows. He'll probably catch Ferguson while he'll probably catch Gaethje while coming in. As mentioned before, Gaethje's style is very plodding. He likes to hands up and come into range. He also has a habit of Gaethje has a habit of throwing multiple combinations. If you pay attention, during his combinations, his other hand drops. This is going to open up avenues for Ferguson to connect with his spinning elbows. I really think Ferguson's counter elbows, that's when he spins or he just puts his elbow up waiting for Gaethje to ram into the elbow. These things are going to do massive damage to Gaethje. If he doesn't finish Gaethje, it's going to open up a cut. Gaethje has been cut above his left eye in the last few fights, and these cuts have a bad habit of popping up again, recurring again and again. no one of them has a clear advantage here, but both of them have clear advantages in different ranges. When it's far off, Ferguson also has a longer reach. He'll have the advantage when you come in closer to the roundhouse kick range. Justin Gaethje, you come in closer again to the boxing range, Justin Gaethje, but you come in closer to the elbow range. Tony Ferguson will have the advantage over there. What Tony Ferguson will also have an advantage of is striking against the cage. If Ferguson keeps going to Gaethje's body, it's going to pay dividends later on in the fight when Gaethje starts tiring much faster. Talking about getting tired, we're going to come to cardio. Ferguson's cardio is inhuman. If you were to have a normal camp between the two, I would still say Ferguson has the advantage. Over here, Justin Gaethje had 3 weeks. That's their first, when their fights were initially scheduled. He had 3 weeks to prepare, if I'm not mistaken. 3 weeks is definitely not enough time to prepare for a 5-round fight. I would tend to believe Gaethje's team and him were planning on trying to finish the fight early, first, second round. You add another 2 weeks of training to that. I see no point in changing that plan. In 2 weeks, you're not going to get much. Your fitness is not going to increase exponentially. You might as well stick with your first game plan and trying to finish the fight early. Ferguson definitely has the endurance edge over here. So when you come down to which area do I see this fight won or lost? In the first round, I see Gaethje coming in hard. If he rocks Ferguson, I do see Gaethje finishing the fight. While initially Gaethje was very wild with his finishes, if his last 3 fights show anything, he's gotten a lot more calm and methodical in his finishes. And the X factor here you need to add is that there is no live crowd. That means there'll be no loud boom when the rockdown happens. Keeping that in mind, I think if Gaethje does hurt Ferguson and Ferguson starts going into his roles, Gaethje will be calm and methodical enough to bide his time and go in for the finish. On the other hand, how one could see a finish in the first round is Ferguson getting a counter spin elbow and finishing the fight. Towards the later end of the fight, I think Gaethje is going to come in hard. Towards the end of the second or mid-third round, Gaethje is going to start getting tired. That's when you're going to see Tony Ferguson getting the better of the grappling exchanges. End of second round, mid-third round, I see Ferguson getting a choke, but while below from bottom. You have to understand, if a cut happens on Gaethje's face, the smoothness is going to make slipping the arm under the chin for the choke much easier. Fourth, fifth round, it's going to be all Ferguson. I see a TKO finish while Ferguson's on top. Next, so my final prediction for UFC 249 main event, Ferguson versus Gaethje. Justin Gaethje has the more chance of Justin Gaethje winning the fight through one avenue, and that is a first round KO. Ferguson has a lot more avenues to win the fight. Second round, end of second round to mid third round submission. Fourth, fifth round TKO. And if we were to go distance 5 rounds, I would say Ferguson. My final prediction for the fight is definitely Tony Ferguson. Second round submission or fourth, fifth round TKO. It will not go 5 rounds. Fights like this do not happen often. The first two rounds are going to be pure carnage. Everyone knows Gaethje's style is to come in and hurt someone. Tony Ferguson's the type of person to never shy away from a throwdown. The first 2 rounds are going to be pure carnage. It's going to be wild. Enjoy it.
9 main event, Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. Who was the more durable fighter? I would have to say Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson has had some really difficult fights. If you talk about his fight against Kevin Lee, he was dropped, he was mounted, he escaped the round with, he could have been finished, but he fought back, he came back and actually triangled Kevin Lee. So I think I would have to say Tony, even though Justin Gaethje is extremely durable. Like his fight against, I think, Michael Johnson, he got dropped multiple times as well. But between the two of them, I would say Tony Ferguson in that division is one of the most durable fighters compared to anybody. Okay, next question is, will Tony's unpredictable offense hold up against the seek and destroy style of Justin Gaethje? Why and why not? But Tony's striking is very unorthodox, and I think it's not something that you can get sparring partners to replicate in training. So while Justin Gaethje is extremely dangerous striker and he's someone who likes to move forward and throw offense after offense, even though he puts his own self in the line of danger, I think Tony is a different level altogether because he's got unorthodox movement. He moves differently. He switches stances. His head movement is weird. So I think the unpredictable nature of Tony's and Tony also practices a lot of Wing Chun and whatnot. So I would have to say that I'll give the advantage to Tony Ferguson in terms of the striking. The interesting thing is that both fighters will want to move forward. Tony likes to move forward, put the pace, and so is Justin Gaethje. So you've got two styles clashing. So it's going to be a really interesting contest, very exciting fight. It's going to be exciting. Next question. Justin Gaethje's wrestling versus Tony Ferguson's grappling. Who has the edge and why? I think if Justin Gaethje honestly wants to take Tony down, he will have to shoot a number of times. He'll have to put him against the cage and really work that wrestling. Can he take Tony down? I think he can take Tony down, even though Tony will do some really unorthodox counters. He'll roll away from takedown attempts. He'll do all of that. But I think if Gaethje wants to really take him down, he will. Because also Tony is not scared of going to the ground. He's a 10th planet black belt, so he doesn't really mind being taken down. So it's not so much a case of one person's takedown against other person's grappling. It's more, if Tony wants to go to the ground, he will let Gitchy take him down. So that's that. Next, is there a cardio edge that one of them holds over the other, and why? I would have to say, if you go back and if you hear Eddie Bravo, who's Tony's BJJ instructor and one of the best in the world, he talks about how he's never seen anybody with that much cardio as Tony. And the second thing to think about is Tony has been in preparation for the Khabib fight for a while. Okay, Justin Gaethje didn't have a fight of that magnitude that was set up. So I think Tony's been training longer. I think he cut weight 2 weeks ago. So he's in shape. He's been training for a while and he's primed to go. So I think cardio-wise, again, I'll have to give the advantage to Tony, only because he's been in camp for a lot longer compared to Justin. Okay, finally, ultimately, in which area do you see this fight won or lost, and why? I honestly think this is going to be a striking battle. It's going to be both will be standing up, throwing bombs, both want to control the center, and in the end, it's going to be a 4-round or 5-round fight where cardio will play a massive role. I think Tony in the 4th round or 5th round is going to be just too much for Justin Gaethje, and that's how it's going to end. Final prediction, I just made the prediction that Tony is going to win. It's going to be a referee stoppage, either 4th round or 5th round. So enjoy the fight, guys, and let's hope that this is the most exciting card we've ever seen.
Hey guys, UFC 249, Justin versus Tony, gonna be exciting. If I have to pick one who's more durable, it's not going to be easy, but it's difficult to bet against Tony Ferguson in this case. In terms of striking, Tony has been unpredictable, which always is an advantage in the cage. Justin was more predictable. His game was seek and destroy, but the last two fights were different. He was waiting, watching, and delivering punches at the right moment. So it's a different game plan. It's a different Justin. Maybe that might, play to his advantage in this fight. In terms of grappling, for me, it's clear. College level grapplers, both of them, extremely good wrestling background. But when it comes to cage performance, Tony's track record in the cage is a lot better than Justin's, who's got just one submission. And Tony brings a lot of jiu-jitsu aspects into his game. So I'd give that edge to Tony. In terms of cardio, there's no way you can bet against Tony, man. He's got a never-ending gas tank. I do not see Justin outworking him, especially in the late rounds. This fight is going to be won and lost in the first 2 rounds. If Justin can land just enough strikes, Justin has a power advantage. And if he can do damage in the first 2 rounds, he's going to win. If Tony can get his game plan going, drag this out a lot further, and even if taken down, work his jiu-jitsu, I think that's where Tony has the advantage. In terms of the final outcome, I cannot bet against Tony, man. He's a guy who would, I believe, give Khabib a tough fight. Justin's just going to be another step on the way up.
To begin with, I must say that, this is probably going to be one of the most violent fights to put on any card. And to have this fight replace Tony versus Khabib, I think is perfect for any fight fan. Between the two of them, 49 finishes with just 7 decisions. So one thing for sure, this fight isn't going to decision. Regarding who's more durable, I think I'll have to go with Tony Ferguson. I mean, we've been seeing Tony since TUF 13 Team Brock versus Team JDS, and which is, I think, a decade now. I think durability, I would go with Tony Ferguson. I think on paper, this looks like a very interesting bout. Will Tony's unpredictable offense hold up against Justin's seek and destroy style? Well, I think, Justin Gaethje, as we know, is known for his knockout power and, relentless pressure. The only way I see Justin finishing the fight is if he brings the chaos like he normally does in the first round and knocks Tony out, because we've seen that Tony is susceptible to get hit. We've seen that in the Lando Vanata fight and many other fights. So I think, if Justin does manage to win this fight, it'll be in the first round. If not, I see, Tony's unpredictable offense having the edge. We have seen Tony come back from adversities and finish fights. I don't see this fight going to the ground as much because I think this is going to be a stand-up war. That's what both the fighters prefer. But if I have to pick between Justin's wrestling and Tony's grappling, I think I'll go with Tony's grappling. Tony does have 32% finishes, and then there is always that darts that we all can look out for if it has to go into grappling. Tony is dangerous off the back or on the top, and I think Tony's grappling definitely holds an advantage over Justin's wrestling. Cardio edge, I will have to go with Tony Ferguson again. We have seen Tony, get into wars, and we've seen Tony, win decisions or go all rounds. I think cardio edge, I will give to Tony Ferguson. I think we've all seen Justin break at some point. Like I said earlier, I see this fight being an all-out striking war. So I think the fight will be won standing. By Justin in the first round. Post second round, I see Tony Ferguson, winning by TKO. If it does go to the ground, it will be if either one of the fighters is rocked and shoots at the other. In that scenario, I still see Tony winning if the fight goes to the ground. I think Tony Ferguson by TKO, third round.